Next item.
Under Education, Biography Driven Instruction. Biography Driven Culturally Responsive Teaching recognizes the assets of students who are culturally and linguistically diverse learners and leverages those assets to create meaningful learning for students and promotes culturally responsive teaching. The purpose of this presentation is to provide an overview of the strategies used in 4 elementary schools during the 2017-18 school year. Tonight's purchasing consent agenda includes an item that requests approval for Kansas State University and I+1 of Manhattan, Kansas, to provide services to the district's ESOL coaches, as well as building-level administration and teachers at Spate, Beach, Colvin, Pleasant Valley, and Cessna Elementary Schools. This item provides an opportunity for the board's information and discussion.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. I appreciate you having me here, President Rohde, Vice President Logan, Dr. Thompson, and Dr. Irving, board members. Thank you, Dr. Wilmy. I'm here this evening to give you some information about biography-driven, culture-responsive teaching. And that title kind of says it all, honoring each individual's biography and their culture. The goal for this type of instruction, and I'm going to go through first of all and kind of give you the philosophy, the research behind this approach, and then we'll talk a little bit about strategy. Excuse me. So through observation of our students as teachers, we can determine how to most effectively plan instruction. That instruction that will then allow students to view the text through their own lens and then make meaning. So if we think about that sentence in terms of learning as a Velcro hook, if you can take new knowledge and apply it to your own background, your own biography, your own life experiences, that is a stronger bond for that learning. So that is the premise of biography-driven instruction. We have, when you think about culturally and linguistically diverse students, we often think of the whole child. The whole child, I'm sure, sounds very familiar to you since that is one of our strategic themes. So we feel very excited about this opportunity. So we sometimes think about our English language learners when we think about this, and it's great for our English language learners, but it goes deeper too, to those culturally and linguistically diverse students. So when a child's culture differs from school, and you think about the kids that are sitting in front of us now, oftentimes their culture differs from what happens at school. When that happens, there can sometimes be that disconnect, and the curriculum is not always taken in the way we want it to be. So through this process, we hope to be able to use that Velcro hook, excuse me, and help kids take not only their background knowledge, but some funds of knowledge, which I'm going to talk about here in a minute, and tie that all together. I'm so sorry, I have something in my throat, yeah. Thank you. Oh, Mr. Went is going to save me. Excuse me. Thank you. So I'm going to talk next about this this is kind of a mashup word here, the biopsychosocial history of students. So the entirety of every person's life experience makes us who we are. And so when we take into the philosophy of this BDI, we are looking at the the biology, basically who you are as a human being, your makeup, your psychological aspect that you bring to class, and also the social aspects of each person's life experiences. So that is kind of the philosophy around the whole child. And understanding these concepts, excuse me, is the key to academic success. So this work is based off of Dr. Herrera from Kansas State University, and her quote, I think, is very telling about where we are today in our education. Students carry more than backpacks to school. They carry with them intrinsic traits and lived experiences that shape their knowledge, skills, and learning styles. So in a BDI classroom, we would uncover what students already know and that they have experienced, and we would allow them to ask authentic questions. We do this by incorporating these 3 things into lessons. So funds of knowledge, which are home assets. So when you think about, excuse me, culture and the different makeup of families, and you think about conversation patterns, roles that family members play, just your everyday, if you have a big family, a small family, your religion, all of those things play into your funds of knowledge. And that is important to tap into as a teacher in order to create that Velcro hook for learning. We also have our prior knowledge, which are all of our community assets. So you think about socially, economically, the things that happen in our city play into that. And then we have our academic knowledge, which are our school assets, which we're all very familiar with. Okay? So taking those into consideration, when we think about what culturally responsive teaching is, and if it is that Velcro hook, then we know, based on that philosophy, that we need to change maybe some of our instructional strategies, and that's what this serves to do. So if you think about teacher-centered instruction, so lecture, canned questions that you've written before, which would be opposite of those authentic questions I spoke of earlier, teacher talking, right? We could expect to kind of see a steady red bar line of student achievement. When we begin to bring in some BDI strategies, we hope to see student improvement in those green areas. Excuse me. So when it comes to teacher-assisted and facilitated, we would think of in-class practice, the teacher helping you discover errors, revoicing others' ideas, discussion, confirming and disconfirming what you think is right or wrong as a student. Then we get into peer-assisted, which is peer modeling, team learning, offering feedback, and again, those authentic questions, and then checking in on assumptions that kids have. Followed by student-centered at the very top, which is independent application, information across content, and kids monitoring their own thinking with ownership of their own learning. And that really goes along with the professional development and professional learning we've given to principals and teachers the last few years with our Marzano, excuse me, and rigor. I am going to make it through this. I have no idea what has happened. And so to just kind of finish up, I want to kind of just give you a glimpse of the difference between sort of our school-situated biography, which is how we have for many years looked at kids, with the socioculture piece in the middle. And that's the heart, because that's the heart of the child. And we oftentimes think of the child in terms of, did we do a home visit? Did we give them an interest survey about what they like, what they don't like? Do we know the environment that they're coming from? Language is often assessed in a one-point-in-time test, right? Cognitive, we think, well, they're an auditory learner, or they're fidgety, or, what am I going to do to help the child who has a specific learning style? And then academic, we look at prior grades and schooling and what has been their success or not successful. In the biopsychosocial history piece, which is BDI, again, the socioculture is in the middle, and it's life, laughter, and love, because that's who we are as people. And we know that every single experience we have makes us the human beings that we are. And so honoring that, knowing who sits in front of you as a teacher is vital. Language is looked at in terms of comprehension in both the child's maybe first language or second language if they're an ELL student, but also comprehension and expression in their own culture, okay? Academic, we look at access, engagement, and hope. So if I'm a fourth grader and I'm struggling with writing, do I have to write a complete sentence, or can I talk to my teacher and she can scribe it? Because it's really all about my knowledge and am I being successful? And then cognitively, what do you know, think, and how can we apply it? And so that goes back to that green box. And so finally, as I am still not able to talk, I will leave you with a quote, again, from Dr. Herrera, that students carry more than backpacks to school. They carry with them intrinsic traits and lived experiences that shape their knowledge, skills, and learning styles.
Thank you. We have a question, starting with Cheryl.
Yeah, just a quick question. I know we are working with 5 schools with this program, but is this a program that is in a pilot stage for possible expansion, Or, I guess, just tell me a little bit about the 5 schools and where we're going from there.
We actually have had some partnership in the past. I know Mr. Went, when he was the turnaround principal, I like to call him, at Cloud. They use these strategies quite a bit. I also used them at Ortiz when I was the principal at Ortiz. And so we've kind of had pockets in our district. And Mr. Went and I have sort of called on Dr. Herrera at K-State to kind of help us bring back some of those strategies. So now we want to get in, we want to see in a bigger section than just our 2 buildings where we were principals, can this really impact student learning and growth? Can we support what teachers need in terms of professional learning to have that happen? And we think that we can. So we're excited to see look at some data over the next year and be able to compare some growth.
And then you'll come back with a different proposal, or you don't know yet?
We're not sure yet. We're not sure where this will go. But we feel like the strategies are sound. And actually, when you look at some of the actual strategies, the instructional strategies, they're very similar to other strategies. You know, I often say I don't know why I didn't mesh these all together and make my own, and could have made a lot of money. And so that's kind of what they are. But what makes this different is that biography and the culture piece, the philosophy, the research behind honoring the child in front of you.
Okay, thank you.
Ron?
Oh, thank you, President Rhodey. I just want to say thanks for doing this, because I know as a teacher in ELL classes, it is difficult. One of my strangest experience was a student that was from India, but they lived in Panama. They were born and raised in Panama and spoke Spanish. They just, matter of fact, one of them just graduated, the Jetton family. But it was interesting because I was approaching them from a point of view that they were from India somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, until I sat down with their dad and he started speaking Spanish to me, and I'm looking at him thinking, wow, this is very interesting. I wonder what their story is.
Right.
You know,
Right.
so yeah, it's really critical, because I think that was probably I forgot what year I was in as far as teaching, but I learned a lot from them, and just kind of taught me how to approach students differently and really understand their story, where they're coming from, because we assume that, you know, if they're from somewhere else, you know, we kind of just put them in a box and go from there.
Right.
So yeah, this is really interesting. Thanks
you.
for doing that.
I often say that you could not pick me up and set me down in France and have me be successful at a university there. So
Yeah.
I kind of equate that to the same thing. Thank you so much. And I apologize. I don't know what happened, but it just kind of,
We don't like to hear
I must be. I don't know. Yeah.
Ernestine?
Well, I taught teaching world history to particularly in the about Martin Luther and some of that era, and trying to explain the conflict between the Lutherans and the Catholics to a student from Japan was, as she was trying to understand about eating flesh and drinking blood, and was freaked out by the whole thing. But I wanted to suggest that, I don't know who's in charge of this, but I would suggest that even a presentation at new teacher orientation might be useful, because people can take pieces and parts of this and put it into their curriculum, even just becoming aware of this, like our world history class ought to be dealing with African cultures, ancient African cultures, and not just be so Eurocentric. Mm-hmm. So there's some things that teachers could do without it being a formal presentation or argument by the district or the board.
That looks like all the questions we have. You can go rest.
Thank you.
And thank you, by
Thank
the
you
way.
very
Good
much.
idea.
Appreciate it.
10 minutes ago. Thank you.